Hey, everybody. We're going to go ahead and just give folks a few more seconds to trickle in. But as you're joining, feel free to post any questions here, and we will do our best to tackle them. But let's go ahead and just wait a few more moments. All righty. Well, let's go ahead and get started here. So first off, I want to say a big thank you to Winston for that really amazing demo. I think Shiny Express is going to be a really awesome tool. And it's really just kind of propel folks, into the Shiny ecosystem. For me personally, I'm an R developer. I have been for a long time. I started to dabble with Shiny for Python, and I found it as like a good kind of gateway into the Python ecosystem. And I think this is going to make it even easier. So I'm really excited about it. For those that I have not met before, my name is Ryan Johnson. I'm a data science advisor here at Posit. You've probably seen my face on all these sessions kind of leading up to today. As a reminder, we do these on the last Wednesday of every month. And for today's demo, we brought in Winston, who is the Shiny guru. So let me give a few seconds here to have Winston introduce himself. And as we like to typically do, I'm going to give Winston a little icebreaker here. And Winston, my question to you is, when you're not developing Shiny or developing Shiny applications, what do you like to do in your free time?
Hey, thanks, Ryan. All right. Hi. What do I like to do in my free time? Well, I have 3 kids, so I end up spending a lot of time doing kid stuff. That's pretty much it. In the past, I've had various hobbies. Like I like doing woodworking quite a bit. I like making things. But these days, I don't get a lot of time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, maybe when the kids get older, I suppose.
Yeah.
All righty. So before we start diving into the various questions, and really appreciate you all chiming in either on the YouTube chat or here within kind of our platform for this Q&A session, I would first like to bring your attention to a quick survey that we're going to flash on the screen down here at the very bottom. This survey is just a way for us to collect some information about your interest using Shiny Express and also Posit Team. It's insanely short. It'll only take you a couple seconds, but it really just helps us get some feedback from all of you all in the data science community about your interest in Shiny Express, Shiny for Python, Posit Team. So in a second here, you'll see that URL for that demo pop up. So just if you don't mind taking a few moments here to fill that out, we'd really appreciate it. All righty. So with that, we're going to start diving into the questions. And the first question we actually got during the live demo. And it came from Adam here asking, are there any performance benefits to using Shiny Core over Shiny Express? So Winston, I'll give you the floor.
Sure. So there's a couple levels to this question. So in terms of the overhead for using Shiny Express over Shiny Core, there's like a trivial amount, like when it parses the code, where it has to evaluate each line and decide whether or not to use the return value of that and put that into the UI for the application. So there's like that's really, really, really trivial. There is one thing that people should be aware of. I'm not completely sure if that's we have it detailed on the website at this point, but it does. If you are developing locally, when you load a Shiny Express app, it runs the code one time to generate the user interface components, and then it saves that. And then for each session that connects, so the first web browser that connects, it'll run that code again to set up all like the reactive stuff and the outputs. So, and then for each, and that's the same. That part is the same as for Shiny Core app, and it runs the code. So it runs the code twice when you're developing locally for when you visit the app. So that could be noticeable for local development. For when you're deployed on a remote server, that shouldn't. Well, there are some cases where that could, that could be noticeable, but we're working on ways to make it easier to sort of split up the code that needs to just run once for the UI and the code that needs to just run for the server. So, so we'll be writing more about that in depth in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Winston. All right, we're going to move on to another question here. So is it possible to set up a standalone Shiny server that supports hosting both Python and R Shiny apps on the same instance, or would one need to build two servers, one for each language? I can actually talk a little bit about this, and then Winston, you can feel free to add any additional comments there. So here at Posit, we do have a few solutions for taking your applications that are built in either R or Python and hosting them so you can easily share them with whoever. It could be your coworker, your boss, friends and family, whoever you want. So in terms of Shiny Server, which is a tool some folks have probably heard of in the past, one of the first tools that we ever developed here at Posit, allows you to take a Linux server and essentially convert it into like a hosting platform. And the open source version of Shiny Server does allow you to have both Shiny applications built in R or Python. So it's a really great tool. Now, converting a Linux server into a kind of a hosting environment does require a little bit of IT and admin overhead. And you are, just limited to Shiny applications. That's pretty much about it. So we would certainly advocate for the use of one of our professional tools called Posit Connect. And so Posit Connect is what we call our professional publishing platform, because you can host multiple Shiny applications, both R, Python. You can host your Quarto documents, which we talked about in previous sessions, APIs and Fast API, Flask apps, Bokeh, Streamlet. We have a ton of different support for various content types. And again, they can all be hosted on the same server. And as the developer or the owner of the various content, you have a lot more control over it, say with Shiny Server. You have control over who has access to it, how it runs on the server, so you can allocate more processes to it. You can really fine tune it to ensure a good user experience. So that would be kind of my 2 cents in terms of hosting your Shiny applications. Winston, do you have anything else you want to add there?
No, that's great. Yeah. Well, actually, one other thing, with Connect, every app that you deploy gets its own set of Python version and Shiny version and all the packages. And that's true for R and Python. Whereas with Shiny Server, it's all the apps they're deployed under just like one user, and they don't have that sort of isolation, so it's harder to manage versions and dependencies and stuff. So so if that's important to you, Connect is a better tool for that.
Excellent. All right. Well, we got another really interesting question, that kind of a hot topic about AI application within Shiny. So this person's looking for a framework to build generative AI applications. Are there any plans to make Shiny Python Core or Express work well for this beyond chat stream?
Yes. So this is actually really great timing. So we've actually been working on doing some planning for the upcoming 6 months or so, and we are one of our big things is that we want to do a lot of exploration in sort of the ML and AI areas, and we will be working on tools for generative AI and for machine learning applications. How exactly what exactly is going to come out of that, we don't know yet. That's something we're still trying to figure out. But we know that that's an area that's really important to a lot of people. So we are going to be putting some effort there. And I can't promise any specific thing because it's still an area that we're trying to figure out, what we should do. But but stay tuned.
Awesome. All right, so taking a question here from the chat, can you talk a little bit about how to use the Shiny extension on Visual Studio Code? They said that looked pretty interesting in your demo. So I know there's been a lot of work with this. So Winston, maybe you want to talk from a high level about some of the cool things you can do when developing Shiny applications within VS Code.
Yeah, it's funny because I've just been using that for so long that I sort of forget what can you not do when if you don't have that. I believe you can just go to the Visual Studio Code extensions, and you can just install this Shiny for Python extension. Again, I forget the details since I've had it for such a long time. But then, you can then to test out your app, to run it, you can just hit the play button, and then it will pop up in another panel in the VS Code editor. And yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you more about it. I'm not the person who wrote that. But so I don't know all the things it does. Again, I've gotten so used to using it. But you might as well just install it and use it. It'll make your life easier.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of the folks on the call here that may be Shiny for R developers and have really gotten used to the integrations within the RStudio IDE, they may be a little scared, so to speak, to start developing Shiny applications in a different environment. But I do think that Shiny extension and some of the cool features that it builds into, specifically Visual Studio Code, really makes the development quite a joy. So I, like Winston mentioned, just try it out, play with it, and I think it's going to start to click pretty quick for everybody. All right, so moving on to the next question here in the chat. So you mentioned that there are limitations on saving data when using the web app. How about when using a server-based app like SQL Alchemy?
Okay, I think this is referring to Shiny Live. So Shiny Live it's a way of running Shiny where Python is not running on the server. There's a special version of Python that's compiled to WebAssembly, which runs in your browser. So when you deploy an application that way, there are some benefits to it, but there are also some limitations to it. Like you can't. There's no server that it's running on. The server is just a dumb web server, and it sends you these. It's like a static website essentially, and all the Python code runs in your browser. So there's nowhere to save data to. Now, for a traditional Shiny deployment, I think that's what's meant here by server-based app. You can do anything. So if if you're running Python code on the server, and so if you want to, if you've got a SQL database, or if you want to just write files to disk, as a CSV or whatever format, you can do that. It's just running Python code. So that's a big difference between Shiny Live and regular Shiny deployment.
Awesome. Yeah, and just to remind everybody, keep those questions coming. So we're kind of plowing through these questions pretty quickly. So I definitely want to get all your questions answered here. All right, so moving on to the next question. And this one actually might be pretty quick, something I can probably answer. So is it possible to run Posit Connect on premise? If so, is there a cost? So Posit Connect is a tool, again, that we've built here at Posit, one of our professional tools within that Posit team ecosystem. And Posit Connect is meant to be installed on a Linux server that you maintain. And where that Linux server is completely up to you. If you want to have a physical server right next to your computer and install Posit Connect on it, you can do that. If you want to have it hosted in the cloud in a virtual machine, you can absolutely do that as well. So that's one of the benefits of Posit Connect, is it gives your team the flexibility to install it on a Linux server wherever that server may be. And it could be a single server. It could be a compute cluster using something like Kubernetes or Slurm. You can also integrate, well, at least Kubernetes, you can integrate with Posit Connect. And yes, there is a cost with Posit Connect. So if you're curious to know a little bit about the cost, we just encourage you to reach out to us here at Posit. I believe you can use sales@posit.co. But again, we're going to flash the survey here in a little bit, or the chat with us as well. That will help kind of book a call, and we can talk a little bit about your team, your needs, and get you a kind of a really customized Posit Connect instance for your group. All right, so I'm going to move on to another question here, which I really like this question. I think Winston can talk a lot about it. So the question is, you seem to be doing a lot with Python. What is happening with R development in Shiny?
All right, that's a great question. So it's true, we are doing a lot with Python and Shiny for Python, and more of our energy is focused there than on Shiny for R. And there's a bunch of reasons for this. One of them is that Shiny for R has been around for close to 12 years now, and Shiny for Python has not been around for 2 years. Hasn't been around for 2 years. So for R, Shiny is pretty mature, pretty well established. There's not a whole lot right now that we're doing to Shiny for R, except for there's various UI stuff. So there's like a lot of the UI stuff, like in BSLib, like for sidebar styling and cards and all that sort of stuff. That is actually happening in R first, and then we bring that code over to Python, because a lot of that is the reason we can bring that code over is because a lot of it's JavaScript and CSS stuff, and then we port the R code to Python code. Now there's stuff that happens in the other direction as well, where we have been implementing stuff in Python, and we have ideas that sort of feel natural or that come up from Python that then we have brought over to R. So a recent example of that is being able to run asynchronous extended tasks. So to be able to launch something in the background in a Shiny app, and then keep using your Shiny app while some computation happens in the background. That's something that Joe Cheng implemented, and we did that first in Python, and we brought it over to R as well. So there is sort of this exchange that's still going back and forth. But again, Shiny for R is a lot more mature, and Shiny for Python, there's still a lot of stuff that we need to do to get like feature parity for Shiny for R. But yeah, and the Shiny actually, I should mention, so Shiny Express, that's another thing that was that we were able to do in Python. We sort of looked around, and we saw, oh, okay, it's possible to do things this way here. Let's try that. And then and we may, I'm not sure. Well, it depends on what people ask for, but like I have a sketch. I have a basic version of that working for R as well. But in order to get that, fully baked, there's a lot of work in terms of documentation and a lot of details that need to be done. But we could bring that over to R as well. So there is an exchange of things that going in both directions.
Gotcha. Thanks. I got another quick question for you. Does Shiny have a dark mode?
That's a great question. Our team, we merged a pull request yesterday to add a dark mode widget to Shiny. So it's actually, gosh, I don't know if I can show you here, but it's really cool. You click on it, and there's this really cool animation where it's like there's like a sun thing, and it just turns into like a moon. So yes, that is there. That's in the development version of Shiny. And I think it's already in Shiny for R, right? Or BSLib on the R side.
Yeah, I believe it's in BSLib.
Yeah.
So yeah, stay tuned for that. All right, so this is a really good question that I know I've gotten from the data science community a lot. Can you compare and contrast Shiny Express and Streamlet? And so I'm not sure if maybe this would be, you can boil it down to just like Shiny versus Streamlet, really.
Yeah. All right. This is always this is a big question. So, one of the things that Shiny does really well, is, I think, in comparison to Streamlet, is the execution model can let you do a lot more stuff. So, like when you change an input on a Shiny application, that sends a message to the server, and the server knows, like, hey, I need to recompute everything that uses this input value and nothing else. And then, it does a computation, and it sends the updated outputs back to the web browser. And that can be quite efficient. And contrast that with the Streamlet model, where you do anything, you change any inputs, and it reruns the whole script over and over again. And then they have tools to try to reduce the amount of computation and data that's sent over to the browser, like caching. But that's sort of like, that stuff is sort of an add-on, and it's like, it makes things more complicated, whereas that's just sort of the basic part of Shiny. Now for Shiny Core, there's more code you have to write compared to a Streamlet app. So that I think was a hurdle for people to get over. So we're hoping that, hey, with Shiny Express, we've removed a lot of the boilerplate code. You can keep things a lot more concise, and so hopefully hopefully that'll resonate with people, and they'll be like, okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and just get started writing this app with just this minimal amount of code, and so hopefully that will be, people will be able to get started really quickly with it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we got another question here. How to modularize the Shiny Express app like the traditional Shiny core?
Okay. Another great question. For Shiny, so for those that aren't familiar with this, there's a thing that we have in Shiny called Shiny modules. This was originally in R, and it's not. So in the Python world, there's already, modules already mean something else in Python. But when we're talking about Shiny modules, we specifically mean like components, Shiny components that you can use on a page and reuse, and they're sort of encapsulated. So in a Shiny Express app, you can use modules that are written with the Shiny core syntax. You can already do that. Now, if you want to be able to write a module using the Shiny Express syntax, that's something that we're working on right now. And there's some details about that make it a little bit challenging. Like how do we want people to be able to write this code and express what they want to do? But we're going to do it. So we'll get there. And sorry if there's yelling in the background. My kids are homesick today, so there's
all good.
It's a little bit of chaos.
All good. We can barely hear it. So
okay, great.
I see one more question here, and again, we still have about 10 or so minutes for questions. So if anyone has any other questions, feel free to add those. But in the meantime, we got one more question about kind of your development of Shiny applications. And this question is asking if there are any advantages to using Visual Studio Code instead of the RStudio IDE for developing Shiny applications.
I would say, if you're developing Shiny for R applications, the RStudio IDE is definitely the way to go. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of work that's gone into that to make it to improve the experience of writing Shiny applications for R. If you're writing Shiny for Python applications, I think I do use VS Code instead of the RStudio IDE because it's really good for Python stuff. So and there's this extension, this Shiny the Shiny for Python extension for VS Code, and it understands like Python syntax highlighting and type checking and all sorts of stuff that can be really useful. Whereas I know RStudio IDE does some of those things, but there hasn't been as much effort put into that on the RStudio IDE side.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I can also just kind of one plug for one of our other professional tools, Posit Workbench. One of the IDEs within Posit Workbench is Visual Studio Code. And we've actually incorporated a Posit Workbench extension, which allows you to run applications, interactive applications, as like a proxied server from within your development environment. So it's a great way to develop Shiny applications within VS Code and then run them kind of within your development environment, see those changes kind of live as you're developing. So a really cool feature. All right, we got another question here, maybe a quick answer, but would it be possible to call a Shiny app from Jupyter Notebook? If not, is there an integration planned?
It is definitely possible. Sorry, I'm thinking back. I had at some point in the past, I had made it possible to launch a Shiny app from a Jupyter Notebook. It was a little bit hacky. There's actually, I think there's a couple different ways somebody might want to go about it. So one of them is like, hey, I'm in a Jupyter Notebook. I want to launch this Shiny app. And they could write the code in the Jupyter Notebook and then launch it. Launch it and then view that from a different web browser window. That is possible. It's like I said, that part is a little hacky. There was actually something where Joe Cheng, he actually had some Jupyter integration for Shiny, so you could write code that was sort of like Shiny Express, and then the stuff would just show up in the Jupyter notebook, like the inputs and the outputs. We actually, I don't know, there's maybe like a month or so of work that was put into that, and it's not clear. Well, we weren't sure where to go with that, like if that's really where we're going to keep putting more effort. So we ended up focusing on Shiny Express instead of continuing on that Jupyter path. But I mean, if that sounds like something that a lot of people would be interested in, then we might revisit that decision. Because I mean, it was actually kind of cool to be able to just like put in the stuff, like inputs and outputs in the Jupyter notebook, and just be able to have that show up. So yeah. So
gotcha.
Yep.
All righty. Well, I think we actually tackled all the questions that came through on the chat. So we can probably wrap it up a little early. But again, if anyone has any questions remaining, feel free to add them here in the last couple of minutes. But Winston, actually, I just have a question for you in general. It's a good kind of wrap-up question. So, you've been working on Shiny for a while, and Shiny is going to be around for a long time. But what would you say is you're personally most excited about for Shiny in terms of like what's coming, what your team's working on, anything you can share in terms of like what's the latest and greatest coming to Shiny that you're excited about?
I'm actually really excited about this exploration that we're going to do for ML and AI stuff. So, last year we put some energy into some, making it work with like LLMs. So that's, ChatStream, sort of just ChatStream came out of that. But that was kind of a side project. And so now we're actually going to focus some energy on that. And and hopefully something, some really cool stuff will come out of it. And like I said, it's still in the exploratory phase, but that's the kind of stuff that I really like is learning about new stuff and just like and building new things. So so that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I think everyone here is equally as excited. So that's awesome. All right. Well, with that, we can wrap up a little early. So really appreciate Winston for the great demo and also for sticking around for the Q&A. A lot of great questions from the audience. So thank you all. And then just one last little plug here. We're going to post it in the chat just one more time. If you don't mind taking 2 minutes to just fill out the little survey just to get some feedback from you all regarding Shiny Express, Shiny, Posit team, what you like, what you don't like. That just helps us internally to improve our tools, improve sessions like we're hosting today into the future. And again, if you have any other questions, there's also a link in the chat to set up a call directly with us. We'd love to chat about all things Shiny, all things Posit. Really, we're open up to the entire art and data science community. So thank you all. Thank you, Winston. And we'll see you again on the last Wednesday of next month for our next Posit team demo. Thanks, everybody.